"Sir, come and save my mama," she pleaded, pointing down a cracked sidewalk toward a house forgotten by the world. She was 5 years old, barefoot, and out of breath, tugging at the sleeve of a stranger in a $1,000 suit. The man, an untouchable CEO walking off the edge of his own loneliness, had no idea that this tiny hand would drag him straight into the heart of everything he never knew he was missing. Hello family, welcome to True Life Stories. Please subscribe and leave a like for us, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The pot on the stove hissed quietly as the smell of onions and tomatoes filled the small kitchen. The overhead light flickered once, twice, then buzzed back into a steady glow. Maria stood in front of the stove, wooden spoon in hand, stirring the bubbling sauce that was supposed to stretch just far enough to make dinner for her and her 5-year-old daughter. Her eyes stung from the heat and exhaustion, her body running on the thinnest thread of sleep and caffeine. "Almost ready, baby," she called out toward the living room, where little Nia sat on the worn couch, coloring the same page she'd been working on for the past half hour. Nia's voice responded, soft but cheerful. "Okay, Mama." Maria smiled to herself and turned back to the stove, but that moment of peace was brief. A sharp, spinning feeling gripped her head. Her hand lost its grip on the spoon. The world tilted sideways, colors blurred, sounds folded into silence. She tried to call for Nia, but her lips wouldn't move. Her knees buckled beneath her, and in the next breath, she collapsed onto the cold, tiled floor, the spoon clattering beside her. Nia heard it. The sound wasn't loud, but it was different, off. She dropped her crayon, slid off the couch, and padded into the kitchen. "Mama," she said cautiously, stepping closer. Her tiny feet stopped abruptly when she saw her mother lying on the ground. "Mama!" she cried louder this time, running to her side and dropping to her knees. Maria didn't respond. "Mama, wake up!" Nia's heart pounded in her chest. Her mama always woke up. She always got up, even when she was tired, even when she was sick. She didn't stay still like this. Tears welled in her eyes, and without thinking, she ran to the front door, yanked it open, and stepped outside barefoot. The sidewalk was hot beneath her feet, the late afternoon sun casting long, sharp shadows across the cracked pavement. Her eyes darted up and down the street, mostly empty. The old man on the porch 2 houses down was sleeping in his chair again. A dog barked somewhere far away. No one was there. Her chest tightened. Then she saw him. A man, tall and neat in a blue suit, was walking slowly down the street, looking straight ahead with his hands in his pockets. He looked out of place in this neighborhood, too clean, too calm, too shiny. But Nia didn't care. He was someone. Without hesitation, she ran toward him. "Sir," she yelled, her voice shrill with fear. The man didn't stop. "Sir," she yelled again, louder this time, her voice cracking. He turned, startled, eyebrows drawn together as he looked at the little girl running toward him. She reached him and, without asking, grabbed his hand with both of hers. "Sir, come and save my mama," she pleaded, tugging at him, pointing frantically down the street. Elijah Cross blinked, uncertain. "What?" "My mama fell down. Please. Please come." Her grip tightened, her eyes wide with panic, glistening with tears. Something primal pushed through his confusion. He looked down the street where she was pointing. "Where do you live?" She didn't answer with words. She just pulled. She yanked at his hand with all the strength her tiny arms could muster, dragging him forward with desperate urgency. Elijah followed, his polished shoes clicking against the pavement as he let himself be led. They reached the small, aging house, the front door still ajar. She didn't even pause to open it wider, just ducked inside, pulling him in behind her. "There!" she cried, pointing toward the kitchen. Elijah's breath caught in his throat. A woman lay crumpled on the floor, unmoving, her hand still loosely curled beside a pot of what smelled like burnt sauce. The stove was still on. He rushed forward, kneeling down beside her. "Ma'am," he said quickly, checking her breathing. "Can you hear me?" She was breathing, but shallowly. Her forehead glistened with sweat. Her skin was pale. He glanced around the kitchen, then back at the stove. He reached up and shut the burner off before pulling out his phone and dialing emergency services. Yes, I need an ambulance. A woman has collapsed. She's breathing but unconscious. Yes, he gave the address, speaking quickly and clearly. Nia stood at the edge of the kitchen, her hands clasped over her mouth. Is she gonna die? No, Elijah said firmly, looking her in the eyes. No, she's not. Help is coming. The girl nodded, but tears streamed down her face anyway. She walked over and knelt beside her mother, resting a tiny hand on her arm. Hold her hand, okay? Elijah said softly. She did. Minutes felt like hours. The paramedics arrived with the usual noise. Boots on the floor, questions, clipped voices, measured urgency. Elijah stepped back to let them work, watching as they loaded Maria onto a stretcher. He turned to find Nia clinging to his leg. I want to go with her, she whispered, voice trembling. Elijah hesitated, then nodded. You can come. I'll be with you. She looked up at him, eyes searching. Promise. I promise. The ambulance lights strobed across the cracked walls of the neighborhood as the doors slammed shut. The siren wailed to life, breaking the stillness of the afternoon. Elijah held Nia's small hand tightly as they climbed into the back, the medic giving him a sharp glance, but not protesting. She's family? The medic asked, already adjusting an oxygen mask over Maria's face. Elijah paused, his voice catching for just a breath. I'm staying with her daughter. She didn't want to be alone. The medic nodded once. She's lucky you found her. Pulse is weak, but steady. We'll stabilize her at County General. Nia sat beside her mother's stretcher, her knuckles white as she gripped the edge. She didn't cry now, she just stared, her little face carved in a tight, rigid expression that didn't belong on someone so small. Her lips trembled, but she refused to let out a sound. Elijah looked down at her and placed a gentle hand on her back. She's going to be okay, he whispered. She's in good hands now. Nia didn't look at him, but her body leaned slightly into his side. The city streets blurred past the windows in streaks of light and shadow. Elijah's mind reeled, not from fear exactly, but from the sheer unfamiliarity of it all. 10 minutes ago, he was walking off a frustrating call with his executive board, debating layoffs and profits. Now he was in the back of an ambulance, holding the hand of a child whose name he still didn't know. When they reached the hospital, Nia's small legs had to run to keep up with the gurney as it rolled through the automatic doors. Nurses took Maria into a treatment room, a curtain swinging closed behind them. Elijah crouched down beside Nia in the bright, sterile hallway. You should sit down, he said softly, nodding toward the waiting area. Nia didn't move. She looked up at him finally, her eyes glassy. I don't want to leave her, she whispered. I know. Elijah gently reached for her hand again. But they won't let us in right now. We have to wait. It's just for a little while. She finally nodded. He led her to the plastic chairs lined against the pale green wall. They sat down together, and she curled up next to him, her head pressing into his side. He removed his suit jacket, folded it, and placed it beneath her legs like a cushion. The waiting room was quiet, too quiet. Only the low hum of vending machines and the distant crackle of the PA system broke the silence. Elijah shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the receptionist behind the counter. The woman was typing on her keyboard, bored and unfazed. His gaze wandered to the clock on the wall. 4:46 p.m. He exhaled slowly. Do you want something to eat? He asked, leaning down toward Nia's ear. She shook her head. Water. Another shake. He rubbed his forehead. He'd faced mergers, lawsuits, hostile takeovers, but he had no idea how to comfort a terrified child. What's your name? He asked finally, gently. She looked up, voice small. Nia. Hi, Nia. I'm Elijah. She blinked. Are you rich? The question startled him. Why do you ask that? She shrugged. Your shoes are shiny. He chuckled despite himself, glancing down. Yeah, I guess they are. Nia tilted her head. Are rich people nice? He didn't answer right away. Some are, he said after a moment. Some forget how. Are you nice? Elijah paused, then answered honestly. I'm trying to be. Nia nodded slowly, as if measuring his words. She leaned her head back on his side again. Elijah didn't speak after that. He sat with her, watching the second hand on the wall clock circle again and again. Time ticked on, dragging its heels. He didn't know why he hadn't called his driver. Or his assistant. Or anyone. The world outside, the world he controlled, felt far away. Unimportant. Here, in this overlit room filled with outdated magazines and the smell of disinfectant, nothing else mattered but this little girl beside him and the unconscious woman behind the curtain. A nurse finally emerged from the corridor, clipboard in hand. Family of Maria Cooper? Elijah and Nia both stood. She's stable, the nurse said, voice efficient but warm. She collapsed from acute exhaustion. Her body simply gave out, severe dehydration, malnutrition, and prolonged stress. She's lucky someone found her when they did. Nia stepped forward. Can I see her? The nurse nodded. She's awake but very tired. Just a few minutes, okay? Nia grabbed Elijah's hand again and pulled him with her as the nurse led them down the hall. The curtains were drawn halfway open, and Maria lay in the bed, and four in her arm, her eyes fluttering open at the sound of their footsteps. Mama! Nia rushed to her side, her voice suddenly bursting with emotion again. You scared me. Maria weakly lifted a hand, brushing it over her daughter's hair. I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. Elijah stood back, unsure of whether to stay. Maria's eyes turned to him, confused. Who? He helped me, Nia said quickly. I found him. He called the ambulance and stayed. Maria's lips parted, trying to form words. She looked so fragile, her skin sallow, her voice dry. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered. Elijah stepped forward slowly. No thanks needed. She ran out and found me. She's the brave one. Maria smiled weakly. Her eyes closed for a moment, just from the effort of staying awake. Rest, Elijah said gently. You're safe now. We'll be right outside. As he ushered Nia back out of the room, her small fingers tangled into his again. She didn't say anything, and neither did he. But in the silence that followed, something between them had changed. The sun had long since dipped below the horizon when Elijah stepped outside the hospital, Nia's hand still wrapped securely in his. The evening air was thick with the scent of heat and concrete, the pavement still warm beneath their feet. They walked in silence toward the bench near the parking lot entrance. A streetlight flickered overhead as the breeze rustled the branches of a nearby tree. Elijah sat down, and Nia curled beside him without asking, her small body pressing into his side like she'd done it 100 times before. He looked down at her. Her hair was a little tangled now, her dress rumpled from the hospital hours. But her eyes, they were watching him, quietly studying. She's gonna be okay, she said suddenly, more to herself than to him. Yes, he nodded. She just needs rest. Nia went quiet again, her legs dangling off the edge of the bench. He hesitated. Do you want me to take you home? Get some things for your mom? Maybe some clothes? I gotta feed my cat, she said instead. Elijah blinked. You have a cat? She nodded solemnly. His name is Pepper. He hides a lot when Mama's not home. Elijah smiled faintly. All right, let's go check on Pepper. They walked down the sidewalk again, this time slower, the sky darkening with every block. As they moved deeper into Nia's neighborhood, Elijah noticed everything. The cracked sidewalks, the broken porch lights, the flickering neon signs from the bodega down the street. The kind of place he only ever saw from behind tinted windows. Nia's house came into view, modest, its white paint peeling in long curls near the window panes. The porch sagged slightly on one side. The front door was still ajar from earlier. She walked in first. Pepper, she called softly. A soft meow answered, and a black cat with a crooked tail padded out from behind the couch, blinking up at her with glowing eyes. Nia knelt, gathering the cat in her arms. I told you I'd come back. Elijah stepped inside, scanning the room. It was clean but worn. The carpet was frayed at the corners, the cushions on the sofa faded from years of sun. A line of children's books was stacked neatly on a shelf beside the TV, and on the wall hung a hand-drawn picture of Nia holding hands with her mother. It was crayon-colored, taped to the wall with pride. "She works a lot," Nia said suddenly, as if she knew what he was thinking. "She's always tired." Elijah turned to her. "She does all this for you?" Nia nodded and pointed toward the tiny kitchen. "Sometimes I try to help. I dry the spoons and fold the napkins." He looked into the kitchen. The floor still bore the dark outline of where Maria had collapsed. The stove was off now. Dishes from the unfinished meal sat in the sink. A handwritten note was stuck to the fridge. "Dinner plan, spaghetti tonight. Save extra for lunch." Elijah stepped closer, reading another paper held by a magnet. A torn envelope, an electric bill, months overdue. He didn't say anything. He just sighed. "Do you want me to help you pack a bag for your mom?" he asked after a moment. Nia nodded. "She needs her red blanket. And her lip balm. She says her lips always get dry in hospital air." They moved together through the house. Nia led the way, small hands moving with practiced confidence, opening drawers, digging beneath the bed, pulling out a worn red fleece blanket and a small tin of balm. Elijah helped her gather a few changes of clothes, folding them carefully, placing them into a faded canvas tote bag that had a grocery store logo on the side. "Do you and your mom have anyone else?" "Family nearby." Nia shook her head. "My grandma died before I was born. Mama said it's just us now. Just me and her and Pepper." Elijah nodded slowly. "You're lucky to have each other." She smiled, hugging the bag to her chest. "Yeah, she's my best friend." It wasn't until they were locking the front door again that Elijah realized how quiet the street had become. No traffic, no voices, just the chirp of crickets and the far-off echo of a train. He walked Nia back to the hospital, his mind unsettled by how much he had seen in so little time. He had walked into their lives by chance, but it no longer felt like an accident. When they reached the hospital again, a nurse let them into Maria's room. She was awake this time, sitting up with a blanket tucked over her lap. She looked better, but not by much. Her skin still held a ghost of fatigue, and her voice was faint. "Nia," she whispered as her daughter rushed to her bedside with the bag. "I got your blanket," Nia said, unfurling it and tucking it around her. "And your lip stuff." Maria smiled weakly, looking over her daughter's shoulder at Elijah. "Thank you. I don't even know your last name." "Cross," he replied. "Elijah Cross." Her eyes widened slightly. "The Elijah Cross?" He gave a small nod. Maria blinked. "I've seen you on the news." Elijah tucked his hands into his pockets. "Probably during one of our corporate lawsuits." She let out a hoarse laugh. "Or one of those charity galas with crystal chandeliers and shrimp cocktails." "Guilty as charged," he said, his tone dry. They looked at each other for a moment. Two strangers pulled together by a thread of something strange and sudden. Maria lowered her eyes. "I'm sorry you had to see the house like that. And all this." Elijah shook his head. "Don't apologize. I was the one walking by. Your daughter, she didn't wait for the world to help. She found help. That's a strength most adults don't even have." Maria's lips trembled slightly, and she turned her face away, swallowing emotion. Nia reached for her hand. "I told you someone would help us, Mama." "You did, baby," Maria whispered. As Nia curled up at the foot of the hospital bed, exhausted but content, Elijah sat in the visitor chair and watched the two of them. This tiny, unbreakable family bound by love and struggle. He didn't know what he was doing yet. He didn't know where this path led. But he knew he wasn't walking away. Not now. Not ever. Elijah stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window in his penthouse suite, gazing out over the city skyline. Below him, traffic moved like glowing veins beneath steel and glass, an endless stream of red and white lights stretching through a world that never paused. But tonight, he couldn't see it the same way. He wasn't thinking about his next quarterly report, or the internal memo he'd ignored all week, or even the meeting his assistant had rescheduled 3 times. He was thinking about a little girl with tangled hair and bright eyes who had asked him, with heartbreaking simplicity, "Are you nice?" That question had echoed in his mind all evening, louder than the sirens below or the silence within. He'd seen poverty before, from afar, in annual reports, in documentaries narrated by celebrities, in statistics prepared by his charitable foundation. But seeing it in a home, a place filled with warmth but hollowed out by exhaustion, was different. He couldn't forget the feel of that worn carpet under his shoes or the handwritten grocery lists on the fridge. The cat that darted from shadow to shadow. The little girl who held his hand like it was a rope tied to hope. He took a deep breath and turned from the window. The penthouse felt empty. It always had. Sleek, cold surfaces gleamed under soft recessed lighting. Art on the walls, a Monet print, a framed blueprint of his first corporate building, hung in perfect symmetry. The wine in the fridge was the kind you couldn't pronounce unless you owned a yacht. And yet none of it had ever made the place feel like a home. His phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Derek Legal. Tomorrow's board meeting is at 8 sharp. Expect pushback on the Midtown housing proposal. Investors don't like the cost projections. Elijah didn't answer. He opened the fridge, took out a bottle of sparkling water, and stared at it, then closed it again. He wasn't hungry. Instead, he walked to his office, flipping on the desk lamp. A sleek black leather notebook sat open where he'd left it days ago, filled with the scribbles of a man more interested in profit than people. But tonight, he didn't flip to the next page. He opened a new one. Maria Cooper, he wrote at the top. Below it, age, early 30s? Daughter, Nia, 5 years old. Lives in Southcrest neighborhood. No partner/family support. Multiple jobs? Need to ask details. Medical status. Recovering from collapse, stress, malnourishment, exhaustion. Proud. Dignified. House, clean but run down. Likely behind on utilities. He paused, tapping the pen against the paper. Then added, not looking for a handout. That last line mattered. He knew the type, people like Maria who had no safety net, who'd never asked for anything and would rather break than beg. Which meant whatever help he offered had to feel like opportunity, not pity. Like partnership, not charity. He leaned back in his chair. For years, he'd run his life with numbers and contracts, leveraging risk and reward with brutal efficiency. But nothing in his experience told him what to do next. Giving money was easy. But this wasn't a tax write-off. This wasn't a photo op. This was a woman who had fought the world quietly every day, and nearly lost. This was a child who trusted him without reason, who had no idea what he could or couldn't do. Elijah opened his laptop and began typing. Not a press release. Not a proposal. A letter to himself. Things that matter now. Nia. That kid needs more than food. She needs security. A future. Stability. Maria. Needs recovery time. No pressure. No bills. Needs choices. Not pressure. They're home, it's not safe. Needs fixing, not replacing. They belong there. Job. Something flexible. Respectful. Sustainable. Something that gives her power. No spotlight. No news. Just quiet help. He sat back, staring at the screen. For the first time in years, he wasn't building a brand. He was building something human. His phone buzzed again. A different message. Mel, assistant. Mr. Cross, you missed your dinner with the mayor. Do you want me to reschedule or cancel? He replied with one word. Cancel. Then he grabbed his coat. The next morning came early. The boardroom on the top floor of Cross Holdings was already buzzing with tension. Suits lined both sides of the polished table, tablets and graphs and bottom-line projections glowing under the dim light. Elijah walked in exactly on time. Gentlemen, ladies. His voice was calm but clipped. We're not cutting the Midtown housing program, he said before anyone could speak. A few people straightened in their chairs. Derek, his legal head, frowned. Elijah, the cost. I said no. He tossed a manila folder onto the table. Inside, photos of neighborhoods like Maria's. Reports on working mothers. Stats on collapsing wage-to-living cost ratios. And on top, a photo, snapped quietly on his phone, of Nia sitting beside her mother's hospital bed, tucking that red fleece blanket over her mother's legs. "This isn't about margin," he said. "It's about meaning." Silence settled like fog. He didn't care. Later that day, he sat outside Maria's hospital room again. Nia was inside, telling her mother about Pepper's breakfast and how she'd brushed her own teeth, with only a little help. Elijah leaned his head back against the hallway wall, eyes closed for a moment. He still didn't have all the answers. But for the first time in years, the questions felt like the right ones. The morning sun streamed in through the thin hospital blinds, painting soft, golden bars across the sterile white sheets of the hospital bed. Maria blinked against the light as she stirred, her body heavy, but her mind finally beginning to clear. The humming of machines had faded into background noise, and for the first time in days, she didn't feel like she was sinking. Her hand moved slowly over the red fleece blanket covering her legs. Familiar, warm, worn with time and love. Then she heard it, quiet laughter. She turned her head. Nia sat cross-legged in the visitor chair, playing a game on Elijah's phone, giggling softly. And beside her, Elijah sat again, watching. Not with the impatient air of someone fulfilling an obligation, but with the relaxed presence of someone who chose to be here. Maria cleared her throat. Both of them turned to her instantly. "Mama!" Nia beamed, sliding off the chair and hurrying to her side. "You're awake for real this time." Maria lifted her hand, brushing her daughter's cheek. "Still here, huh?" Elijah stood, offering a small smile. "She wouldn't leave your side for long." Pretty fierce for her size. Maria tried to sit up straighter, wincing a little. She gets that from her mama. Clearly. A brief silence settled between them. Maria looked at Elijah, really looked this time. His tailored clothes, his polished posture, the effortless way he belonged in a world far above hers. But there was something else too, something less visible. The softness in his voice, the tiredness in his eyes, a quiet stillness. She gestured to the chair beside the bed. "You've been here a while?" He nodded. "Didn't want to disappear." "You didn't have to stay." "I know." Maria's eyes flicked toward Nia, who was now humming quietly to herself, her focus back on the game in her lap. Then she looked back at Elijah. "Why did you stay?" He didn't answer right away. "I don't really know," he admitted. "Something about the way she looked at me. The way she asked." He paused. "And when I saw you lying there, I couldn't just leave her alone." Maria exhaled slowly. She wasn't used to kindness from strangers. Not like this. Kindness that stayed. "I've had worse days," she murmured. "But this one, it came close." Elijah looked at her gently. "You almost died. I've come close before." She forced a weak smile. "Just never with an audience." That caught him off guard. He laughed, low and sincere. "Do you always deflect with humor?" he asked. "Only when I'm uncomfortable." Elijah nodded. "Fair enough." She shifted against the pillow, choosing her next words carefully. "I'm grateful for what you did. Really. But I'm also used to people who offer help with strings attached." He nodded, not offended. "I'm not here to pity you," he said. "I'm here because I respect you. And because I think maybe, just maybe, I can do something useful. On your terms." Maria raised an eyebrow, her defenses instinctively rising. "What does that mean?" "It means I want to help. Not out of guilt. Not because it makes me feel good. But because it's the right thing to do. And because your daughter deserves more than surviving. And so do you." He reached into the inner pocket of his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper, placing it on the table beside her water cup. "I know you're not ready to think about work yet. But when you are, that's an offer." Maria frowned slightly, reaching for the paper. She unfolded it with slow hands, reading. "Position, Community Engagement Coordinator, Cross Foundation. Flexible hours. Full benefits. Childcare stipend. Salary, $60K/year. Reports directly to Director of Local Initiatives. Job description, advising on poverty alleviation programs, community outreach, and real-life impact strategies." She stared at the page for a long time, then looked up. "I'm not a degree holder. I don't have a LinkedIn. I've worked at diners, cleaned offices, stocked shelves. Exactly, Elijah said. That's what makes you qualified. You understand the people we claim to serve. You've lived it. She folded the paper again, carefully, slowly. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from weakness now, but from uncertainty. Or maybe disbelief. And if I say no? He smiled, leaning back in his chair. Then I'll come back next week and offer something else. I'm not trying to buy your life. Just help build something sturdier under it. Maria nodded slowly, her eyes glassy. I don't want Nia to grow up thinking this is normal. The hunger, the fear, the constant scramble. She won't, Elijah said softly. Not anymore. A tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. She wiped it away with the back of her hand quickly, embarrassed. Sorry, she muttered. Don't be. They sat in quiet after that, the hospital room filled only with the beeping of monitors and the soft click-click of Nia's game. After a while, Maria looked at him again. Do you come to a lot of hospital rooms offering jobs to single moms? No, Elijah said. Only one. She smiled. And for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like she was sinking. The air outside the hospital felt different. Cooler, cleaner, somehow less hostile than Maria remembered it. Maybe it was just her imagination. Or maybe it was because, for once, she wasn't walking home from an overnight shift or dragging a tired child in tow from a crowded waiting room. Today, she was leaving not broken, but mending. Her left arm still felt a little weak, and her legs wobbled with every step. But she was upright, alive, breathing in a second chance. Pepper's probably mad, Nia said, skipping beside her. He hasn't had a cuddle in days. Maria smiled as she gripped the handle of the tote bag slung over her shoulder. It contained her discharge papers, a prescription for vitamins, and a neat folder Elijah had delivered earlier that morning. Orientation documents, a schedule, and handwritten notes from someone on his team welcoming her aboard. It didn't feel real yet. As the cab pulled up to the curb, she looked behind her. Elijah wasn't there. He had been earlier. He had helped with paperwork, signed the insurance forms without blinking, spoken softly to the nurse about arranging follow-ups. But when it came time to say goodbye, he had simply touched her shoulder and said, "Take your time. The job will wait. No promises. No pressure. Just presence." She wasn't sure if she missed that already, or if it terrified her to admit that she might. The house hadn't changed, but it felt different. Returning home wasn't triumphant. It was humbling. The broken porch step still creaked. The fridge still wheezed when it opened. The stack of unpaid bills still sat in its usual corner, demanding her attention like a disapproving parent. But the moment she stepped through the door, Nia ran to her room with a squeal, and Pepper the cat leapt onto the couch with a meow that could only be described as dramatic protest. Maria dropped the tote bag on the table and looked around. The house was silent except for the ticking of the kitchen clock and the faint thrum of a neighbor's TV next door. She sat down slowly, then reached into the bag and pulled out the Cross Foundation folder. The logo gleamed on the cover in embossed gold. She flipped it open and stared at the orientation packet again. There it was, black and white, typed neatly on a single page. Welcome, Maria Cooper. The words felt too clean, too polished, too official. Her eyes dropped to the salary figure again. More money than she had ever seen on a single document. Steady income. Benefits. Childcare support. Even a clause about personal wellness flexibility. She closed it quickly and rubbed her forehead. It wasn't that she didn't want it. It was that a part of her, some deep, conditioned part, believed she didn't deserve it. That voice came back again. The one that whispered cruel doubts. You're a charity case. A token. He's just being kind because you fainted on a kitchen floor. You don't belong in boardrooms. You belong behind counters, behind cleaning carts. She stood abruptly. No, not today. She walked to the sink, filled a glass of water, and drank it slowly. Then she picked up her phone, hesitated, and dialed the number on the contact sheet. A woman answered. Cross Foundation, Janelle speaking. Maria swallowed. Hi, this is Maria Cooper. Elijah said. I could start when I'm ready. I think I'm ready, There was a pause. Then warmth. Maria, we're thrilled. Would Monday work? We've already prepared your desk and orientation materials. You'll be shadowing me for the first 2 weeks. No pressure. We'll go at your pace. Maria's throat tightened. She forced the words out. Monday is perfect. By Monday morning, her nerves felt like a beehive under her skin. She dressed carefully, a pale blue blouse she hadn't worn in years, paired with black slacks she found at the back of her closet. She had to iron them twice. Nia sat on the couch, watching her like a tiny talent scout. You look like a boss, she said proudly. Maria chuckled, tying her hair back into a clean ponytail. Well, I don't know about that. You look like someone who's going to make big decisions, Nia added, nodding as she handed her a peanut butter sandwich in a Ziploc bag. This is for your lunch. Maria's heart tugged. Thank you, baby. They left together, walking hand in hand to the daycare center arranged by the foundation. Nia kissed her cheek goodbye with the confidence of a child who believed the world would treat her mother gently from now on. Maria hoped she was right. The Cross Foundation headquarters was a glass-paneled building with a wide atrium and sunlight flooding through from above. It was beautiful but intimidating. She stood just inside the lobby, clutching her bag like a shield. Then she heard a familiar voice. Maria. She turned. Elijah stood near the reception desk, not in a suit, but in a simple button-down shirt and rolled sleeves. He looked normal. Human. Thought I'd be the first to welcome you, he said. Her stomach fluttered. You didn't have to, she replied. I wanted to. She stared at him for a second longer than was necessary, then looked away. He noticed, but said nothing. Janelle appeared moments later, guiding Maria gently into the elevators. Elijah watched them disappear, a strange heaviness in his chest. He had told himself he would give her space. But as the doors closed and Maria disappeared from view, he realized something quietly unsettling. He wanted to be in her orbit, not just to help, not just to save, but to stay. Maria adjusted the strap of her bag as she stepped into the elevator, her fingers gripping the handle just a little too tightly. It was her 3rd week at the Cross Foundation, and though she no longer felt like a ghost haunting glass halls, the feeling of being an outsider still clung to her like the scent of old laundry. She had learned the routines: coffee in the break room by 9 o'clock, morning check-ins with Janelle, and afternoons spent reading case proposals and reviewing outreach requests. She had even earned a few smiles from the other staff members, and once, someone had complimented her spreadsheet skills. That had felt oddly like winning a trophy. But still, the questions lingered in her own mind. Do I belong here? Or is this just a beautiful illusion, waiting to dissolve? Her heels clicked softly as she walked through the open concept office, passing clusters of desks where team members typed quietly, their screens filled with polished presentations and grant statistics. She reached her own workspace, a modest but bright cubicle near the windows. A little potted plant Nia had insisted she bring sat in the corner, next to a ceramic cat mug filled with pens. She sat, exhaled, and opened her inbox. Morning, Maria. Janelle's voice drifted over the cubicle wall. Morning. Elijah asked if you're free at noon. He's doing a walkthrough of the new community outreach space in Easton. Said he wanted your perspective. Maria blinked. Me, he said, and I quote, Maria sees what we don't. Janelle chuckled. He's not wrong. Maria's stomach flipped. She minimized her inbox and leaned back slightly in her chair, heart tapping out a faster rhythm. Since her first day, Elijah had kept his distance, not in a cold way, but in a deliberate one. No favors, no special treatment. When they passed each other in the office, he offered a quiet nod, a polite smile. Once, she caught him glancing at her during a staff meeting. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, acknowledgement maybe. Or memory. She shook the thought from her head. This wasn't about him. This was about the job. At noon, she stood beside the black company SUV, holding a clipboard and feeling both important and like she was pretending to be important. Elijah arrived 2 minutes later, dressed casually in slacks and a dark sweater, that somehow made him seem less like a CEO and more like a person who might attend a neighborhood potluck. "Ready?" he asked, opening the passenger door for her. She nodded, slipping inside. The drive to Easton was quiet at first. Outside the windows, the city shifted from polished high-rises to cracked sidewalks and shuttered storefronts. The Easton district had once been vibrant, home to families, markets, music. Now it was tired, hollowed out by years of neglect. Maria glanced over at Elijah. He was watching the road, his jaw tight. "Do you come out here often?" she asked. "Not enough," he replied. The SUV pulled up in front of a long vacant building with a faded awning and graffiti across the lower bricks. A temporary cross-foundation banner hung above the entrance, flapping in the wind. They stepped inside. The space was echoing, still raw with construction. Dust on the floor, wires hanging from the ceiling, but sunlight pouring in from tall front windows. In a few months, it would become a resource center. Free meals, childcare, job coaching, mental health referrals. "Looks rough now," Elijah said, walking slowly toward the back room. "But the bones are good." Maria followed him, her boots clicking softly. She could already imagine it. Tables filled with people eating quietly, a shelf of books for kids, murals on the wall. "It doesn't just need paint and furniture," she said. "It needs people who've been here. Staff who know what it feels like to wait for a bus that never comes. Volunteers who remember being the one who needed help. You can build anything, but if you don't belong in it, people won't come." Elijah turned. He wasn't smiling, but his eyes were fixed on her like she'd just said something he'd never heard before but always needed to. "That's why I brought you," he said quietly. Maria looked away, uncomfortable with the weight of his gaze. "You don't have to," she began. "I do," he interrupted gently. "You think you're a guest here, but you're not. This isn't me giving you a seat at the table. This is me realizing you should have been building the table in the first place." Silence settled between them. And something else. Something neither of them wanted to name yet. They walked the rest of the space in companionable quiet. Maria took notes. Elijah offered small observations. At one point, their hands brushed as they reached for the same blueprint roll. Neither of them commented on it. Back at the office, Elijah walked her to the elevator. "Hey," he said before the doors closed. She turned. "People are starting to see what I saw the first day," he said. "And that's a good thing." Maria swallowed. "I'm still trying to see it myself." "You will." The doors closed, and she stared at her reflection in the mirrored panel. She didn't look like a survivor today. She looked like a woman who was becoming something new. That night, Maria sat on her couch in pajamas, Nia curled beside her with a picture book open across both their laps. "Did you see Mr. Elijah today?" Nia asked suddenly mid-sentence. Maria blinked. "Yes." "Why?" "I like him. He listens like you do." Maria smiled. "Yeah, he does." Nia looked up. "Do you like him?" Maria didn't answer at first. She looked out the window, where the street lamps flickered faintly. "It's not about liking," she said softly. "It's about learning to trust." Nia nodded as if she understood, even if she didn't. She nestled against her mother, and Maria wrapped an arm around her. But long after Nia had fallen asleep, Maria sat awake, her mind still in that echoing building, her skin remembering the brush of a hand, and her heart unsure whether it was rebuilding or opening. We have come to the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.